All right, welcome back to Pine Tree State Restorations. And it's Cigarette Lighter Week at Pine Tree State Restorations, and we're going to start off with the Ronson Typhoon, one of my favorite lighters of all time. See if you can see it here. Well, so shiny. There it is right there. The Ronson Company. I'll tell you something about the Ronson Company. The Ronson Company started out as Art Metalworks in 1897, and Louis V. Aronson, 1910, started making the inkwells, the safety matches, and hood ornaments, and he also invented a fluid in 1896, a form of lighter fluid, and he built his first lighter in 1926. It was called a banjo lighter. And Ronson made a million different lighters, but one of their favorites is this Typhoon right here. Now, the Ronson and the Flint and the lighters all got sold out to Zippo. I can't remember. I think, I want to say sometime in the 80s, I believe. Zippo bought Ronson. They still make Ronson stuff, but it's owned by Zippo. And a funny story about this lighter right here after I get done telling you about how to fix it. With all these lighter fluid lighters, you got one problem, and that's loss of fluid due to evaporation. On this lighter, I took the bottom out, the screw out, so you can see that there's a padding in there, a special cotton padding, and that's where the wick sits in. The wick sits down and through there. And how you change the wick is you pull that padding out, pull the wick through this hole, put the padding back around the wick, stuff it back in, and then pull it down to about there. Or you can trim it after if you got a pair of sprue cutters or something that'll get in there, like toenail cutters or whatever you got that'll get in there. But once you get that level with that, then you put this pad back in. That also has a hole for a spare flint. And then the flint goes up in here, right here. Now, a lot of times you'll go to change the flint and nothing will happen. That's because there's a tiny piece of flint stuck up in this tube. When it runs out, it sometimes gets cockeyed and it'll get jammed up in there and you can't get it out. So the best way to get that out is to take a tiny drill bit, run it up through here with your hand. Don't use a drill. Just take a tiny drill bit and give it a little spin up there. It'll come right out. It'll disintegrate. It'll fall out. Just blow it out. And you put your new flint in. Put the screw back in. Tighten it, but not very tight. You can just tighten with your fingers and your thumb. You can spin it until it tightens with your thumb and you're good. Put this back in. And how you fill this is you lift this up and you fill it up with fluid till it gets just barely to the top and then stop. Don't fill it up here because what this does is this soaks up the excess fluid in the lighter. If you try to fill it up to this, it's going to come out and it's going to get in your pocket, and lighter fluid on your skin is not good. It'll turn your skin into hamburger. So that's why this little pad's here. One of the reasons why it's there is to make sure you don't overfill the lighter. So you only want to fill it up to here. Now on the Typhoon, basically all you got to do is just clean it with a toothbrush and to make sure the grills are clean. Got to tell you a funny story about this Typhoon. Me and my girlfriend were on my motorcycle one time, and she says, "I wonder if that lighter will light going down the highway 60 or 70 miles an hour." And I said, "Oh, sure will." So I was driving my bike and I grabbed the lighter and I flicked it. Of course, she was sitting behind me. And when I flicked it, first flick, it lit in a 60, 70 mile an hour wind. And the flame was about 2 feet long coming out of the lighter, coming right back to my girlfriend, almost set her on fire. That baby will light in a hurricane. That's why it's one of my favorite lighters of all time. Now, as far as the evaporation goes, the only way you can stop that is when you put the lighter back together, you close the lid, is you get yourself a rubber band, a short, wide rubber band, and you put it all the way around this edge. Okay? That will essentially seal the lighter up and it won't evaporate the fluid. Because if you fill this, set it on the shelf, eventually everything will evaporate just going through the wick area and the lid. Okay? Same with the Zippos. They make a thing that you can put in the bottom of the Zippo and supposedly slows down the evaporation, but that don't do a thing for the evaporation where the wick is, where the lid closes. Same thing. Get yourself a rubber band, you go around that ring, get a wide, small rubber band, go around that. When you put that rubber band on there, that will essentially seal that lighter up and no fluid will evaporate. That's how you want to do it. Rubber bands, you can buy a whole bag of them for nothing. And the Zippos were started in 1932, and they were started by George G. Blasdell, first Zippo in 1933. Zippo purchased Ronson in 2010. That's what I thought. And so they own Ronson now, but they still make Ronson lighter fluid, flints, lighters, everything. They don't make the Typhoon anymore, which is one of my favorite lighters. But Zippo makes literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kind of lighters, and they make camping gear. They make everything, and they're probably never going to go out of business. They're a great lighter. Now on to the Scriptos and the other lighters that are see-through. These are a different animal here. The Scriptos started making the VU lighter in 1955, and in 1984 they sold out to the Tokai Seiki Japanese company, and Scripto started in 1923, but they made their first VU lighter in 1955. It's now owned by a Japanese company. Obviously, they don't make VU lighters anymore, but they still make lighters, lots of lighters. Now, working on the Scripto is a whole nother animal. It's the most complicated lighter there is, and let me tell you what goes wrong. First of all, bottom screw has a little flat washer on it made out of like a hard rubber. That goes bad and the screw will leak. Not good. The worst thing that happens to the Scripto is there's a plunger right here, okay? And that plunger has two O-rings on it, one inside here and one inside the tank. If those dry out and they go bad, then you're going to end up with not being able to fix the lighter, because the only way you can do it is cut the tank off and glue it back on. I don't recommend that. How you stop that damage is take the screw out, put a little sunflower oil, better, or some baby oil in there and keep it in there so this valve, right, won't dry out. Because if that O-ring dries out and cracks, you're done. The other thing that's the problem is when you take these lighters apart, first you have to pull that up right there. Once you pull that up, you got to take, this will swivel on top. This will swivel like this. And that exposes a screw right here. That exposes a tiny little screw right there. All right. You take that screw out and this tank will come right off. And you'll see where the wick is right there. Okay. So you need to get that wick replaced. Has to be the right length to go down inside that tank. It just pokes in that tank. All right. Another problem you have is sealing up between the tank. I hope you can see it here. For some reason, my phone's not focusing. Hold on one second here. The camera's giving me a little grief. All right. There we go. There's a seal right there. You can see it. Okay. If that's gone or if that's broken, when you fill up the lighter, that's going to leak. It's going to leak around that chrome onto you, and it's going to be painful. So first of all, you got to make sure that foam piece is intact. Then you got to make sure that little tiny gasket right there is intact. If it's not, you're going to have to make one out of a tiny O-ring. And then, or you could use a tiny piece of, like, say, rubberized cork and build yourself a tiny washer to fit on top of this one. Because what your goal is, you want to get this sealed up so it's not leaking between the chrome and the case. And a lot of times they do, because this one's in good shape. Nothing's missing. So it'll be all right. Another thing is the early Scriptos, the VUs, inside the lid, they have a little pipe right there. Now, that's the early ones. Later on, they got away from using that pipe. If you get the early ones with the pipe, the fuel lasts a lot longer than the ones that don't have the pipe. Okay? So you want to make sure that you get an early one. Now, Scripto, to repair these lighters, like I said, this is what you do to repair the lighters. And then here's a Japanese lighter. Okay? It's a copy of a Scripto. Same thing, but also this tank just pulls out and it pokes through right here. A lot of times these leak and you need to build a gasket for that too. This one don't have a gasket. You see where it goes. They make a million different kinds of lighters like this. ATC, Castor, Champ Crystal, Continental, Craftsman, Crown Gold, Duo Lighter, Esquire Seal-Matic, Firefly, Globe, Harvester, Monson Light, Mastercraft, Monaco, Right Point, Rogers, Specco, Visulight, and all kinds of unbranded ones like this. Most of them, the tank comes out like this. It just sits in there. Got to watch out for that. Make sure you got a good seal between that and that, or it's going to leak out. So I hope this helps with the lighters. If you got any questions about Scriptos or any lighter in particular, please give me a shout and I'll be happy to help you in any way, shape, or form. And once again, thanks for watching Pine Tree State Restorations, and we will see you soon.